أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and all other matters. Please say a dua that I will be able to maintain this particular portion of the Patreon page that I'm starting. I have been wanting to talk about the divine feminine, and what usually happens is I can't sort out the multiple ways in which it manifests or is important, and I can't sort of get a handle on, what's the jump off point. So I'm just going to jump in. And I'm going to start going through the 99 names, particularly giving attention to names in their feminine aspects, and also designating some of them as feminine. And today I'm going to talk about Latif. And of course, the form of all the 99 names is a masculine form. So Wikipedia says that the meaning of Latif as an attribute is kind or kindness, depending on how you can kind of get your self wrapped around proper nouns and pronouns and nouns. And I felt most inclined to talk about this one first, because if you think about Latif in terms of other usages, there are certain characteristics that I think I want us to focus on when we start talking about the divine feminine. So for example, even though the form is masculine and therefore, Wikipedia tells us it's a masculine name, and in fact very popular, especially in certain parts of the Muslim world and also non-Muslims, the indication that you have to put a feminine ending or termabuta latifa to get at the feminine is something I want you to deconstruct, okay? So we're going to have to engage with the attributes in such a way that we look at the qualities of the sifa, the descriptions or the attributes. And we're going to have to engage in a kind of grand archetypal understanding of masculine and feminine. And that's the part that gets me, I think, the most stymied, because there is an intimate, integral, and important relationship between the two, especially vis-a-vis Allah and the notion of Tawheed. So all of the 99 names of Allah belong to the same one. And when I focus on the divine feminine, it's important not to take it away from Allah in such a way as, for example, you keep Allah as male, which I don't adhere to. But because Allah has both masculine and feminine attributes, the first thing we need to unpack is that masculine does not mean male. Feminine does not mean female. So de-link the characteristics from female, as especially in the embodied human, and return it to its archetypal implications. So one of the features of the feminine that I will try to explore more and more is the idea of receptivity and also of relatedness, as opposed to the masculine as assertion and individuality or independence. So if you keep those grand schemes in mind when I go through them, and I will certainly repeat it, I think it'll be a lot easier for us to kind of go through these without getting sidetracked into the ways in which, that slippery slope of making everything masculine mean male and everything feminine mean female. But I was inspired to start with this one for two reasons. One is another derivative from the same root form, and that is lutf, L-U-T-F, lutf. And this is a kind of subtlety, the level at which we might best understand as like a feather brushing against the skin. You can feel it, but it's so subtle. And this level of subtlety is in fact an aspect of the sensitization of both our capacity to feel or just the human body. It's very sensitive, and we can feel, from the most subtle of things. And yet, if we again take it back to Allah, it is a relationship of presence. And one of the things that I think is really important for me is to talk about how Allah is always present, and yet sometimes we are not aware of it, or we are aware of it only at the most overt, sometimes even punitive level. And yet, if we can embrace this idea of Allah's presence and subtlety, it will open up, I think, new dimensions. And for me, those new dimensions, going through sort of the feminine trajectory, is one that is comfortable and receptive. We don't feel affronted by that level of presence. And the other reason why I wanted to do it first was because in my Sufi tariqa, we do transmissions for certain centers in the body, and these centers are called Latifa in the singular, and in the plural they're called Lata'if. So once again, we're kind of back to that subtlety thing, because there's the qalb and the ruh, sort of the heart and the spirit. The heart is under and the spirit is under, and there is this idea that you must attune yourself to presence in order to experience the practice of the transmission. So they're like little du'as or little weirds that go along with each of the transmissions. And there's a relationship to different Sufi tariqas in which my sheikh has permission. And I'm not going to go through these because I don't have permission to pass them. I'm just using this idea of the Lata'if to indicate why it is that this one is the one that came to me first of the feminine attributes of Allah, or the divine feminine. So the Lata'if are centers that get activated by our observation, our awareness, our meditation, our concentration. And these two things, to me, the Lutf and the Lata'if, have an interrelationship. That the subtlety of the centers which receive this transmission through the sheikh and his sheikh and his sheikh and on back, generations to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the subtlety of these transmission centers have to be activated by our concentration, our observation, our muraqabah or meditation. And that's kind of the feature of the divine feminine that I want us to take away from the attribute Latif. Yes, Allah is kind, and Allah's presence in kindness is an inspiration for us also to return kindness to the rest of the creation, including ourselves, our nafs, our soul, the issues that we're struggling with, the problems that we might have in terms of the challenges of lockdown, just imagine a kind of gentle presence that is always there, and that we can access to the extent that we open up to the subtlety, and opening up and activating at that subtle level is a high level of consciousness in one way, because it does require of us concentration. It's like, I love to repeat the thing, you know, to be still in order to hear the still small voice of God. And so it's a subtle voice. It's like a whisper. It's like a feather on the skin, that there is a presence of Allah that is always there. And so the difference is not whether or not it comes with a bang, because obviously their attributes are like that too, with your masculine ones. But the difference is our receptivity. In other words, we have to activate our own feminine in order to be aware and clear and to receive at the place where this kind of subtlety is always present. So I start my little bit of conversation, which I'm going to make as short videos, about the divine feminine with discussions of the 99 names. And today the discussion is about Latif. Thank you.